Okay, welcome to Asher on Torah Anytime. We're up to Perek Tezvav. And we just continued in the last Perek talking about how Avshalom finally reconciles with his father. He's brought back to David HaMelech. And they kiss. And they hug it. Vayishtachu lo yalap avisha kamelech l'Avshalom. He kisses him. And life is good for the Jewish people. And that's when the drama begins. So Avshalom goes and he puts together a chariot. He has 50 guys running in front of him. You ever saw those those clips how like in North Korea, I don't know where they have like runners, the people are chasing like these you ever saw like the Square Rebbe's car where you have people hanging down, or you have like all these people where the Chassidim are running after the car, motorcade. So, in the Torah it says that you're not allowed to be mad b'susim. A king is not allowed to have a lot of horses. It's pasuk in the Torah. So how did Avshalom beat the system? Instead of having a bunch of horses, he only had one horse, but he had 50 people running in front of him. That was his way of getting the entourage. Well, you'll see if he wasn't a king. He obviously thought he was. V'hishkem Avshalom. So Avshalom gets up in the morning and he's thinking, how am I going to get the people with me? V'amar al yad derech hashar. So listen to his ploy. He stands by the gateway. V'hikol ish asher yeh lo yiriv lovo el hamelech lemishpot v'yikra Avshalom elov. Any person who comes to the king. Now, don't forget that David HaMelech positioned himself to be a justice. He was here that he's going to bring law and order, anti-corruption. David HaMelech was the anti-corruption king who set everything up that he should be able to personally judge people. So Avshalom is standing outside. People are coming for a din Torah. There's a fight, there's some type of a conflict. He asked every person coming in, which city are you from? You have to understand, this is the prince asking every regular guy who goes in, which city are you from? The prince told him whichever city he was from. And Avshalom tells him, he says, wow, you know what you're saying really makes sense. It's really not fair what you're going through, you know. But you know, it's a pity that the king is really not going to have the time, or he's not going to be able to listen to you. And then Avshalom would like speak to himself, like rhetorically, he would say, "Vayomer Avshalom, mi yisimeni shoifet ba'aretz." I wish I would be, you know, if only I would be a judge, if only I would be a Supreme Court justice. And everybody who has conflict would come to me, and I would be able to zoom in with dactive. I would judge him with integrity. So really what's going on over here, it's like a Gewalt ploy. Because anybody who's coming to David HaMelech who's actually a justice, well, 50% of the people are actually going to lose. That's usually the way it works. 100 people come, 50 are going to come out, or there's maybe some type of pshara, but you usually end up having people coming out feeling that they were shafted. When you're not a justice yet, and every person who comes in and you're sitting by the shar and you tell them, wow, what you're saying makes sense. Halavai, I would be able to be a justice. Now, he goes to David HaMelech, he leaves. Now, if the guy was a winner, if he won, so then, you know, Avshalom says that I would have judged you fairly, and David HaMelech, so there's no loss. But whoever lost, and he met Avshalom by the shad, and Avshalom tells him, hey, he obviously thinks to himself, such a pity that Avshalom wasn't the justice. Such a pity. If he would have only been the judge, then I would have had a better chance to come out a winner. This is early, right? This is a way of manipulating people. Now, the second thing that he did, that every person used to come, he used to bow down. It was the prince, Avshalom. He would help everybody up. Could you imagine? The prince is there, people bow down, and the prince goes there, gives him his hand, and he lifts him up. And he kisses everybody. He's like the ultimate groomer, like he's grooming everybody that. Everybody who comes gets understood, gets heard. He's listening to them. It's usually how cult leaders, people who are molesters, it's like the setup. It's like how you set up people, how you charm them in order to come with you.
So this is him against his father.
This is him against his father. But he's obviously not saying anything against his father. All he's saying is that it's a pity that my father's so busy. I wish I would be able to be a justice and I would listen to everybody fairly. He's not saying anything. You can't actually pinpoint that he did anything. It's always like manipulation zwischen the Trappen, like between the drops. He stole the hearts. This is where the phrase means he stole his heart. Comes from this pasuk. He stole the hearts of all the Jewish people. That's how you steal a heart. It means the heart belonged to David and he stole it. He literally went and he stole it. He set up people to feel compassion, feel closeness, to feel love, to feel wanted, to be heard for an ulterior purpose. That's really what stealing a heart means. That's how you manipulate and abuse people. You steal their heart means you listen to them, you give them the sense of importance, you make them feel wanted and needed for your ulterior purpose. You capitalize on their vulnerabilities in order for your own personal needs or own personal desires. It was 40 years after the Yiddelech wanted a king. And Avshalom tells the king, his father, let me go and let me fulfill my vow that I made to God when I was in Hebron. Let me go to Hebron to fulfill my vow. What vow? You remember when I was in Ikshur, when I ran away after Amnon, after he killed Amnon, he ran away to the grandfather in Ikshur. I made a shvur and I made a neder. If God is only going to give me the ability to return back home to Jerusalem, I'm going to serve God. It sounds beautiful. It's mamish gewalt. And the king says, Leich b'shalom, go in peace. Now obviously, go in peace has a double connotation over here, because the last time Avshalom said he wanted to go to bring korbanos and make a feast, he ended up killing Amnon. So he obviously had a shrewd intention, which he actually has now too. But the king tells him, Leich b'shalom means go with peaceful intentions, not to be shrewd and try to screw me again. And he goes to Hebron. So, he's a repeat offender. So Avshalom is extremely shrewd. And he sends out to Hebron, and he sends spies. When you're going to hear the sounds of a shofar, usually it means that there's a battle. It means that Molach Avshalom b'Hebron. So with Avshalom, he took with him 200 people, and Chazal say these are the 200 leaders of the Sanhedrin. So what did he do? He was extremely shrewd. He went to David, and he said, the prince is going to bring korbanos to fulfill his neder. It's an honor that you should send along the Rosh Sanhedros. So he sent along 200 Sanhedros. They have no idea what Avshalom's intention is. All they know is that they're going along with the son of the king in order to bring up korbanos. So everybody's like, wow. Everybody who sees the Sanhedros coming assumes that they're backing Avshalom. The Sanhedrin have no idea that they're being used to manipulate and to brand a new thing. People are gathering along with Avshalom. There's all the people who were close with Avshalom because he understood them back by the Shar, when they had court cases and they felt shafted and they felt that they lost unfairly for whatever reason, they're also joining him. They're seeing that the Sanhedrin are joining him, so they're assuming that Sanhedrin is backing Avshalom. So therefore, if they had any doubts, they're also on his team. But the Sanhedrin had no idea the game that he's playing with them. So here he did a terrible move. Achitophel was David's yoyetz. He was David's advisor. And he had a chosh, he had a talent to give good advice. Some people were gifted that they're able to see like a few steps ahead of the game, and they can give you good advice, and that guy's name was Achitophel. He called him to that he should also come along with him, because he was afraid to speak to him in Yerushalayim, because maybe David would find out. And the Widerstand, the opposition is growing. And it's growing by leaps and bounds. People are gathering around Avshalom. The Magid, a reporter, came to David and he said, the heart of the people is with Avshalom. As soon as David HaMelech heard that, he realized that the fulfillment of Nasan Hanovi's curse is happening in front of his eyes. The story of Uriah Hitti, where he was told then that it was going to strike within his home and there was going to be rebellion in his midst, is happening. And he did the best damage control he was able to do. Come and let's run away, let's escape. We will not be able to escape from Avshalom. Let's get out of here quick before he gets us. He's going to bring upon us the evil, and the entire city is going to fall. David realized there was no point in fighting against Avshalom because it's destined, it's scripted. And if it's scripted, he might as well go along with the script, and he's going to leave in time and thereby save the city of Jerusalem from falling into a civil war. Whatever you say, boss, we're with you. And they all go out by foot, and they don't have horses. They don't want to make a big. They don't want to make a big shebang, a big trask. They don't want to make a big tumult. He sends his 10 concubines, his 10 palakshim, that he leaves home. He takes his wives and his kids. He leaves the 10 concubines, the 10 palakshim behind. Because he also knew that was also part of, you remember what Nasan Navi said, is that your own wives are going to be taken over by your rival. They go to a safe house that's out of the city in order to gather the people. And out of the city, all of his servants come, and all of the important families. There was from the Chachmei Sanhedrin. They were called Kresim, that they used to cut the law. And Plesi, they were the ones that used to explain the wondrous things in Torah, Lasan of Pella, V'chol Agitim, and all of the Jews who lived in Gat gathered around David. And how many people did he have? 600 people.
That's his whole kingdom?
That's his whole kingdom. That means he started off with 400 when he had all the vagabonds, when he had all of the troublemakers back in the beginning of the story. Then it turned into 600. Builds up this huge empire. Finally successful. He runs away from his son Avshalom. He's back to 600 people.
But this is his entire, all Bnei Israel?
Who stuck with him. Who went along with him to run out of Jerusalem. Most of the city remained. 600 people came along with him. So it's like he's coming almost full circle, and he started off with 600, he's ending up back with 600. First 400, 600 Chevre were troublemakers, people who were criminals and derelicts, and all the Loines Kabul people in Klal Yisrael. This time around, he already has Cheshuvim with him. He has crazy, placy, but he's back to 600 people. He tells Ittai Agiti, he says, why are you coming with me? V'shevim HaMelech, go back to the king. Ki nochri ato, he says, you're a stranger. You just came to Jerusalem, recently. You're not going to find anybody who's going to take care of you. We're running away, we don't have any food. We don't have any way to protect ourselves. V'gam goyla ato. And even if you want to leave and you want to come with us, and you don't want to go under Avshalom's rule, lim koimecha, go back to your hometown. Why should you come along with me? That's what he tells Itay Agiti. T'moil boyecha, you only came yesterday. V'hayoym aniyacho imanu lolechas, and today I'm going to cause you to go become a wanderer. You're not going to have any place. V'ani hoylech, al asher ani hoylech. It's not like I have a GPS destination. I'm going to wander wherever I wander. I don't even know where I'm going. Shuv, return home to Gas, v'hoshev esachecha, and take with you these 600 people. Imach, chesed v'emes, and I'll always consider it a chesed v'emes if you'll return all these people home. There's no reason why I should cause destruction to all of these people who are with me. Just leave me alone. Vayan Itay as HaMelech, and Itay was a foreigner, told the king David, Vayomer Chai Avay v'Chai Adoni HaMelech, by the name of God, and he swore by the name of God and by David, Ki bim koi masha yesham Adoni HaMelech, in the place where the king is going to go, im lemoves im lechayim, whether death or life should come upon us, Ki shom yeh I'm going to be with you, ani yitcha l'chol haderech. I'm with you for the whole journey, for the whole ride. We're not leaving you. He says, being that you don't want to leave me and you're with me all the way, let's go. Let's go. It's very important, this part of the story, because it's just an important part of the story that David HaMelech had friends. That means that throughout the story of David HaMelech, he had Yonasan. He had people who were loyal to him. It means in order for, part of the story of Nach is that when people are in trouble, they need to have support in order to make it through. It's a story of support. And the Navi again and again always brings out where Yonasan was there to support him. That means in his lowest moments, in his lowest times, the worst thing that could happen to a person is when he's going through troubled times without support. That's one of the underlying themes of Navi, is that bad times on its own is not enough to destroy a person. It's bad times without support. And the story of David is that he went through bad times with support. And you see it again and again. Wherever they went and people saw them leaving, people were crying. They saw the tzar of the king, and they're all passing the middle of HaMelech, Kidron. They're going to the Kidron Valley, the Kidron River. They're going towards the desert. So they're leaving Jerusalem, going past the Nachal Kidron onto the desert. There was Tzadok HaKohen and all of the Levites. So they're taking the Aron with them, and they're taking it along as a support for David that the Aron is going with the king. They put it on a very high mountain, on a high point. And Avyasar was standing near the Aron as an honor for the Aron. Until all of the people who were escaping, the refugees who are escaping from their hometown, from the onslaught of Shalom, should have the support of the Aron. And David HaMelech told Tzadok, he said, don't do that. If you remember in the beginning of Navi, what happened with Eli, that they took the Aron, and they said, never abuse the Aron for your own personal gains. Don't take the Aron out of its space. The Aron has to be confined. It has to be hidden. It's a mokem mutzna. It has to be b'tznius. It's not something which is used or abused and the Aron doesn't appreciate it. Bring back the Aron back to the city. If God's going to desire me and I'm going to find favor in His eyes, He'll return me back home. And then I'll see the Aron. But the solution is not to take the Aron out of its place, like what happened back in the story of Shaul, where they took, by Shmuel Navi, by Eli, where they took the Aron out of the, and terrible tragedy befell them to the Plishtim, and then even later the Yidden, because they were looking at it. Chaim. If my advice finds favor in your eyes, Shuva ir b'shalom. Return back to the city in peace. Va'achimatz bincha v'yonasan ben Aviyasa shnei b'neichem itchem. He says, look, if you want to do me a favor, he tells Tzadok HaKohen, he says, you're here to help me, correct? I'd much rather that you go back into the city with your two sons. Where I'm heading now is Arvas Hamidbar. Even though he just told Ita Agiti before that he doesn't know where he's going, which in reality he didn't, but David HaMelech always makes a plan within the tragedy, within the chaos. He's chilled. He always thinks like rationally. He says, look, I'm going to be going in Arvas Hamidbar till I hear back from you. Lahagid li, you tell me what's going on in Jerusalem. Basically, he set him up as espionage. He set him up as a spy. He said, look, I'm going to be stopping there. You go back in the city, and you just notify me what's going on from within. Damage control. You have to assess the situation and figure out, what can I do now under the circumstances? Zeitze Fadin in the hand to get told. Always got to figure out, what can I do today? Everything is messed up. The curse is coming true. It's the end of the universe. Now, at the end of the universe, what can I do calmly, rationally right now? So they return back with the Aron, like David HaMelech said, let's not use the Aron for that. So on the way out, that he's parting from the Aron, which is being brought back to Yerushalayim, he goes up on Har HaZeisim, which that's the place where the Har HaBayis says and where the Mokem HaMikdash would be built eventually. He's crying. His head is tied. He's going barefoot. Everybody who's with him binds their head in the way of Avelis, and they're up there and they're crying. And to David, the Maggid, which is the news reporter, tells him, your close confidant, your advisor, your closest advisor, joined camps with Avshalom. Achitophel joined camps with Avshalom. And David experienced extreme fear because Achitophel's advice was on target. When you heard advice from Achitophel, you knew you're hearing the Dvar Hashem. It was as clear as hearing something almost from the Urim V'Tumim. You knew that Achitophel says something, he nails it. And when Achitophel left him and he went over to the other side, he experienced tremendous fear because he knew that Achitophel would give good advice to Avshalom, and his advice carried weight. And David said, he said, Hashem, I pray to you, screw up the advice from Achitophel, mess it up. Either that he shouldn't advise correctly, or even if he does, that Avshalom should not accept his advice. Now, I found this very fascinating. Usually you would think that if you're a good guy, your advice is good. If you're a bad guy, your advice is not. When in reality it doesn't work that way. Just like people have skills, the Mushal guy could sing. He has a skill to be able to sing. He's musical. You can be musical and connect to God, and you can be a musical, you could be a musical Nazi too. Hamas also probably has really good composers. That means music is a talent. Giving advice is also a talent. There's people who have a chush for advice. You can be an amazing advisor, like this general who was from Iran. What's that guy who Trump killed? Soleimani, whatever his name is, Soleimani, whatever, I can't even pronounce it. He was a really good general. He really was a good general. He had good strategy, and he used to give good advice. He was just a bad person who had good chushim. It's neutral. Everything can be used or abused. So Achitophel's advice was solid. He had solid abilities of an advisor. Vahi David ba'ad harosh. So David goes to the top of Har HaZeisim after he praised Hashem, mess up the ace of Achitophel, asher yishtach v'sham l'elekim. V'hine l'krosei chushai ha'arki. Karua ketunatoi v'adam haroshe. Chushei Arki is dressed, he's ripped his beged, he's wearing earth, and he's crying on the tzara of David. And Chushi was an older person, he was a zaken, and he was coming to just be along with David. And David sees him, David, and he says, don't come along with me. And his mind is already working on damage control. What can I do under the circumstances? He says, if you're going to come along with me, you're going to be a burden. It's not a benefit for me to take you along because I'm not going to be able to take care of you. It's going to be a much bigger favor if you go back home. Now he makes espionage within his espionage force. Before he set up Tzadok and his 2 kids to be his reporters. Now he said, he says, you go and you tell Avshalom that you're joining him. And you make sure to screw up Achitophel's advice. I want you to infiltrate. Join Avshalom and you do whatever it is to mess up Achitophel's advice to Avshalom. Because obviously he was he was a Zoka and he was an important person. And I want you to know that when you're there in Yerushalayim, Tzodok ve'Yasser HaKayanim, anything you hear from within the king, because you're from inside the palace, notify Tzadok and his kids. You have Achimaatz, who's the son of Tzadok, and Yonasan, who's the son of Avyasar. You send any telegram, through them. Kol davar asher tishmu. And Mamela, I'm going to be able to have a channel to know what's going on within the kingdom, within the palace. David, Chushi means Chushi, the friend of David. We spoke about this before, that there's only one place in the Torah where it says someone had a friend. We said that David Amela, that Yehuda had a friend, Reah Ha'adeloimi, Ish Ha'adeloimi. There's only one place in the Torah that it testifies someone had a friend. And the only place in the Torah is that Yehuda had a friend called Ish Adulami. Why was he a friend? Because Yehuda, the Rishonim say it, but the Shamshul Fal Hirsch, but it's a very famous concept, that Yehuda sinned with Tamar. I don't know if he sinned, whatever. He had a situation going on with Tamar. And then Tamar had his Eirav, and he had all of his identity, all of his identifications. He had his ring, and he had his staff, and his tzitzis, he had everything. She had everything. So now, Yehuda had a big problem. He had to pay her, Estlin Zoyna, he had to pay his sheep, and he had to get back his security credentials. Now, could you imagine if Yehuda goes around, he's the Nasi, he's going around and says, did anybody see a whore? Did anybody see a zoyna? Did anybody see a zoyna? It's not gonna go over too well. So he sent Ish Adulami, he sent his friend, and the pasuk says he went around all day and he said, and where's the zoyna? And everybody said, there's no kadesha beinayim. So at the end of the day, after a whole day walking around with a loudspeaker, looking for a kadesha, looking for a zoyna, and everybody said, which kadesha? What's your name? I mean, he wasn't going to make any shidduchim for the rest of his life after this one. He was done. He comes back to Yehuda and he says, I couldn't find her. So that's why the Torah says he was a reya. He was a friend. The only time that the Torah testifies that someone was a friend was an Ish Adulami, Reya Ish Adulami, who was ready to take the whole shame upon himself, that walking around, that everybody should think he was the one who did it. Now is the second time that I came along where the Torah testified, where in Nach we're testifying somebody was a friend. Who was a friend? Who is a friend? Chushi. He was a friend. Now listen to what type of a friend he was. Vayove Chushi re'ach David, ho'ir Avshalom yove Yerushalayim. So he comes back home. V'David avar ma'at me'harosh. So David goes away from the top of the mountain. No, that's it. David Avshalom Yov Yerushalayim, and that's the end of Perek as well. Now, how Chushi was a friend, we're going to see next Perek.